Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. From the first episode, we, the audience, have been made clear through dialogue and costume design that Robert really is into his career as a New York City police sergeant. However, we really haven't seen much of his work, and we haven't really gotten a good grasp on how his family feels about his job, other than like a couple jokes here or there regarding other quirks of his, like in the first episode, oh, how did he become a police sergeant then? And of course, there's going to be some other things later on after he got promoted that I'm going to bring up. It's like, oh. But so far, we haven't really seen him on duty, other than that one moment in the gambling episode where he came back home when he was on shift to deal with his father and brother about the gambling thing. But that was related to something he saw when he was off duty. Here we finally get a chance to see Robert on duty fully and in action. This, of course, is the Ridealong. Episode begins with Ray and Robert just relaxing at Ray's home. They're watching Cops. Robert starts going, oh yeah, they're going. Talking about it from a police standpoint. Ray a couple times is rooting for the perp. He's like, he's the underdog. And then he's like, yo, this show's fixed. And of course, being a cop, Robert takes umbrage at this and is like, what's the matter, Ray? You don't think I actually do this? And Ray's like, eh. So Robert says, how about you come along on a ride along with us? Ray agrees. He has to sign a release. He has to check with Deborah. She's like, all right, you can go on the ride along. Of course, when he goes across the street to meet Robert for the ride along, Marie is her typical Marie stuff. No one discussed this with me. And he starts doing the stereotypical worried mother shtick. Of course, Frank is in there too, but Frank's like, I don't care. This isn't danger. Starts going into his old Korean War thing. Danger, you want to know danger? Which he doesn't do all the time, but whenever they break it out, it always is in the best situation. And this is one, because he starts bringing up type of rifles that they shot at them with. After this, we cut to Robert and Ray in Robert's patrol car with his partner Judy, played by Sherry Shepard. This is her first appearance as Judy. One thing is IMDb lists her as Sergeant Judy, which I would say would make a little bit more sense for a sergeant to have a sergeant as a partner. But watching this episode, I see no stripes on her jacket, no chevrons. So I'm guessing that that's just a typo on IMDb. And she always calls him Sarge affectionately, is both a nickname, term of endearment, also with the respect of someone that is a lower rank. So I'm assuming that she is a normal officer. But then that still raises the question, why does a sergeant have a partner? But then again, could be still even New York City procedure for a street sergeant. Because that's what Robert comes across. He doesn't come across as a desk sergeant. He doesn't come across as one that really does a lot of the supervisory paperwork. Which, is what it is. But so far, it's been a slow night on this ride along, which we really get from the word go, because Ray is being his usual jokey, slightly sarcastic self. And like saying stuff along the lines of, well, it's a good thing I'm wearing the vest, it could have been drafty. Because so far, the main thing they've gone is to check on an open door. Nothing was done. They called it a 1010, which I don't know if that's just them throwing out random police codes or if that's an actual one from New York. Because when I Googled it, it didn't come up with anything like that. I'm like, that has nothing to do with it. Of course, Ray keeps being his jokey self as they get on the radio. Robert's like, ugh. And Judy's trying to put him in his place. Now, I mean this respectfully, but so far in this episode, her character kind of comes across as a stock, loud character. But, I have met people that are like that, so it kind of does work. It's just there's not a lot to it, so there's not a lot for Sherry Shepard to work with, but what little there is, she does pull off wonderfully. Like when she puts Ray in his place a couple times, you really do believe it. And you do believe that as a cop, that if she has to, she will assert her authority. Well, things take a little bit of a more comedic turn when they get what looks like going to be a serious call, an emergency call, and it turns out it's just Marie checking on Ray. And the thing I love about this is that over the radio, Sergeant Robert Barone goes, Ma! Even now, that always makes me crack up just seeing him say Ma over the radio. Well, after a little bit more patrolling, they decide to take a break and they go to Nemo's. Robert has a little heart-to-heart with Ray, and this is a discussion that I've mentioned this a couple times that there are things about these episodes that now watching it as a man in my early 30s, older than the last time I marathon watched it, and when I was first watching these episodes, I do identify a bit more with them. Work in security, this is also one thing I identify this whole conversation Robert has with Ray, where he's telling Ray, "Oh, I'm sorry it's not such a big, exciting, flashy night for you, but a slow night for you is a good night for me." Which, work in security, I can say that is pretty apt. A slow night is boring, but on the up chance, it's easy, and it's good for both us and the casino as a whole. It's a night when it's hectic, especially when we are down several officers, that it's like, oh god. So I can imagine the same would apply for Robert's job, that a night that's super busy where he's like bouncing from call to call to call, while it might go by quickly, it'd be one of those ones at the end where he's like, oh thank god it's over. Whereas a night like this, it's like, nice night, the way I like it. And being the fact that he works mainly in New York City and on Long Island, I can see why he would prefer a slower night. And that probably even more applicable in the 80s when he started. I think he actually started in the late 70s, but anyway. When he started, from what I've heard about New York with its crime, it would have been a little bit more applicable, but you can still see. However, the night takes a turn. It just swerve when a man comes in to rob it. The fun thing about this is it just shows that this robber has no situational awareness. Because why would you walk into a pizza restaurant to rob it when there was a cop car outside? It's like the idiot robber in the beginning of RoboCop 3 where he walks into the one diner to rob it and it's filled with cops and they all point their weapons at him. I just feel to be a rocket scientist. You can act that here. Maybe he came from an angle where you didn't see it, but still, it's like you see a cop car, so, Near Nemo's, I would take it to mean that there's probably at least one cop in there. So unless you're actually going to shoot, probably not the best idea to go in there. Now, when he comes in, Judy's in the bathroom, Robert's over in the corner, sitting down, so maybe he doesn't see the uniform. So Robert covertly takes the guy out. There's one bit of dialogue that Ray says, is like, really, Ray, you going to say that in this situation? I know it's a cheap joke and all. Where Robert's crawling, he's like, call the police. It's like, I am the police. Well, he gets the guy out of there with a pizza throw. And the guy keeps trying to say, I didn't do anything. It's like, dude, the cop saw you there with Nemo. He saw him getting money from the register. Even though he didn't see it outright, you could see you have the gun under your pocket. When he knocks you down, the gun goes flying and he picks it up. You really can't say I didn't do anything at that point. Because the report is going to say, I observed the gun flying. I picked up the gun to disarm him when he was on his back. There's not really much you can say, especially since there's a room full of witnesses that saw you disarmed, and Nemo was even there, and he'd probably testify in a situation like this. The way that Brad Garrett plays all this is like, oh yeah, you really do believe Robert is a police sergeant that will diffuse a situation like this. And the way that Ray Romano plays Ray watching all this is like, you can tell he's a little dumbfounded, which it carries on into the next scene where he's talking with Deborah. He's like, I've never seen my brother like this. I mean, he's had the training and all that. It's just one moment he's my brother, he's like this, and next minute he's the Action Jackson police sergeant. He's just taken aback. And he doesn't come out and rightly say it, but you can tell he's feeling sorry for the comments he made in the opening scene, and that he's never going to question his brother when it comes to his police work. He might joke with him, but he's not going to question it. And then he mentions that his brother is the one whose name should be in the paper. And he decides to call the paper, see if they have put it to bed yet, and he's going to do something for his brother. Now, this is a point where I should mention the best laid plans of mice and men. That phrase really does apply to what's about to happen, because despite Ray wanting to have the article about his brother, it's not about Robert. They frame it about Ray, and I quote, Newsday's own Ray Barone survives pizza holdup, and Ray is fuming when he sees that. But it's you kind of could see it coming a mile away like that, even if Ray didn't tell him that. Because it's news, they're going to slant it in a way that sells best. And what sounds better? Local police sergeant apprehends criminal, or Newsday's own Ray Barone. It's not going to be the main story, but that one sounds better from a marketing standpoint. And the only mention of Robert in there is police apprehended the suspect. They could have mentioned that it was Ray's brother who apprehended the suspect. To be like, Police Sergeant Robert Barone, Newsday's Ray's older brother, apprehended the suspect. Or they could have mentioned that he was the reason they were on the ride along, but nope. That's the only mention of him. Of course, at first, Robert is upset about it because he thinks it's just more self-promotion from Ray. You know, the whole attitude we've seen Robert have with his brother off and on throughout the first season and this part of this season. You know, the never ends for Raymond attitude. And of course, once Marie sees the paper, she goes back into her mother hen attitude. How could you do something with your brother there? Which you kind of understand why she'd be worried about Ray. But the whole thing about her going, why would you get involved with something like this when your brother's there? It's like, would you rather it turn even more violent without him doing anything and Ray gets shot? Because then you'd be complaining about, why didn't you do anything? It's like, he was on duty. The guy was robbing it. He was there. He defused the situation. He acted. He told Ray to get down first. It's just Marie being her typical overreacting self. So this is one of those situations where I'm like, Marie. Frank at least has a good idea. He's like, what happened? He's standing here. He's fine. I think a part of that is also his military mindset as well. Looking at him like, nothing happened, so why are we doing that? But also just common sense is like, both brothers are here. They're fine. No one got shot. Why are you making a big deal about it, Marie? Well, the brothers do reconcile in the second to last scene where Robert is like, I understand why. You're the important part. They do try to reconnect the whole dialogue between the two and the way that Brad and Ray played off one another. It's another scene where you really do believe these two are brothers. It's one of many scenes. And it's not just the actors and the chemistry they developed over the course of the seasons, but it's also the teleplay by Jeremy Stevens, which that might be a name that sounds familiar because he also wrote Your Place or Mine and Brother. Another episode about the relationship between these two from this season, which shows he really does understand the dynamic between the two. Those are the only major episodes recently that he wrote, but it really does show he understands the dynamic. So I'm glad that they keep bringing back a lot of the same writers that understand these dynamics and have them write episodes where certain ones are applicable. So you feel that there is a strong continuity, at least with the relationships, if not with certain plot details. The ending one is a gag. I'm like, not going to get into it for those who haven't seen the episode. All in all, well, I wouldn't say this is a classic on the same level as, say, Checkbook, The Letter, or even some of the later ones. It's a step below, and it's still pretty good. The whole joke of the episode is just a little bit above one note because it all is tied into Robert's police career and the ride-along. But where the depth comes is how it is used to show the different relationships and viewpoints of all the characters. And like it's from Marie, her little viewpoint about Robert's police work, how she doesn't want to think about it because of the danger he's in, her being even more worried because Ray's going there even though he's wearing a vest, Ray not believing Robert, Ray changes his mind when he sees everything, Robert's own mentality. Of course, it's also nice to see Robert's partner for once. Like I said, Sherry Shepherd does an excellent job. Only other things to note she's been in, she was in the movie Precious. She's done some voice work on Rick and Morty, and then she was also in the movie One for the Money, which I don't remember if I remember her in that movie. The hold-up guy was played by Stephen Bruno, who, according to IMDb, this is one of his few notable credits. He does a decent job for what character he is, because he's essentially just a goon. And speaking of someone who's played goons in fan films, I can attest. The thing is, he had more dialogue than I've had, but at least I had a close-up. Joseph Perry is Nemo, always good to see him. Next season, I believe, is the last time we see him as the character before he passes, but I think it also could go into season 4. So I know it's by season 5 that they replace him with another actor because he's gone. Here's not really much for him to do other than, once he's gotten robbed, but he does a decent job. Minor little trivia note is this episode aired the day before my birthday in 19... Fun note is this episode aired the day before my birthday in 1998. Of course, at that point I wasn't watching the show. It's just one of those little things I go back and watch and go, hey, that's kind of interesting. Well, more if the year had been shifted slightly, it would have been an episode to air on my birthday. Well, speaking of family relationships from earlier, the next episode goes from brother, mother, sons, to another spouse-related one, but this one involves the children and not being able to sleep in their own bed, which, embarrassingly, is something I can identify with because as a kid, I used to do that.